I'm Jessica, 28 female. I live in a modest but comfortable apartment in the city, a place I earned through years of disciplined saving and long hours at my job as a financial analyst. It's a quiet life, one I've built for myself brick by brick, far from the chaotic dynamic of my family home. For years, my existence was defined by responsibility, by being the sensible one. That all changed the day my brand new car, the first truly extravagant thing I had ever bought for myself, was turned into a twisted wreck by the one person I should have been able to trust implicitly. My younger sister, Rebecca. And her reaction to the devastation she caused would set in motion a chain of events that would unravel our family's carefully constructed facade of unconditional love. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. The car wasn't just a car. For anyone who has ever worked tirelessly for a single, shining goal, you'll understand. It was a symbol. It was a four-wheeled metallic blue testament to my independence. A 2025 model, fresh from the dealership, with that intoxicating new car smell that feels like pure potential. I'd spent 6 years putting money aside, meticulously tracking my investments and bonuses, sacrificing weekend trips and fancy dinners. My old beater, a relic from my college days, had more rust than paint and a personality that could only be described as unpredictable. It had served its purpose, but I dreamed of reliability, of heated seats in the winter, of a Bluetooth system that didn't require a series of percussive taps on the dashboard to connect. The day I drove it home, I felt a sense of accomplishment that rivaled my university graduation. I parked it in my designated spot in the apartment complex garage, taking a moment just to admire the way the fluorescent lights danced on its flawless paint job. It was mine. Every panel, every tire, every stitch on the leather seats was a result of my own hard work. It represented freedom. Freedom from clunky public transport, from asking for rides, and most importantly, freedom from the subtle, lifelong expectation that my achievements were somehow communal family property. My family, of course, had opinions. My father, Charles, an architect with an eye for design, appreciated the car's sleek lines. "Good engineering, Jess," he'd said with a nod of approval, though his praise always felt measured, as if too much of it might spoil me. My mother, Karen, a high school administrator, was more concerned with the practicalities. "Are you sure you can afford the insurance on this thing? It seems a bit flashy for you." It was her classic backhanded compliment, a gentle tug to pull me back down to earth, to remind me not to get too big for my britches. And then there was Rebecca. My sister, 7 years my junior, was the family's dazzling, beautiful, and utterly coddled centerpiece. While I was tucked away studying for exams, Rebecca was winning dance competitions. While I was working overtime, she was on sponsored trips to Bali that she vaguely called networking. My parents saw her as a free spirit, a creative soul who couldn't be burdened by the mundane realities of life, like holding down a job or paying her own bills. They funded her journey of self-discovery, which mostly seemed to involve a lot of brunch and expensive clothes. When she saw my new car, her eyes widened, but not with pride for me. It was with a glint of pure, unadulterated desire. "Oh my God, Jess, this is sick. Can I borrow it this weekend? I'm going to the lake with some friends, and Brandon's car is so lame." I laughed, thinking she was joking. "Absolutely not, Becca. No one is driving this car but me for the foreseeable future." Her face fell, a mask of theatrical disappointment immediately taking its place. "You're so selfish," she pouted. "It's just a car." "It's my car," I said, my tone firm but not unkind. "I worked really hard for it. You're welcome to ride in it with me anytime, but you're not driving it." She'd huffed and flounced off, and I thought that was the end of it. It was our typical dynamic. Rebecca wants, Jessica says no, parents gently suggest Jessica should be nicer to her sister. I was used to it. I didn't realize that this time, her sense of entitlement had metastasized into something far more destructive. A week later, I was engrossed in a major project at work, preparing for a quarterly review that had me pulling 10-hour days. My best friend, Maria, a paralegal who understood the pressures of a demanding career, had been my lifeline, checking in to make sure I was eating and sleeping. We were supposed to go for a celebratory dinner that Friday once my presentation was done. "We'll take the new chariot," she'd texted, and the thought of it made me smile. That Friday morning, I got a call from my mother. Her voice was strained, wrapped in that false calm she used when she was about to deliver bad news she wanted to downplay. "Hi, honey. Don't panic, but there was a little incident." My heart dropped. What kind of incident? Is everyone okay? "Everyone's fine, dear. It's just, well, Rebecca was in a bit of a fender bender." I felt a wave of relief, followed by a prickle of annoyance that my mother had called me about Rebecca's latest drama during the most important week of my professional year. "Okay, and why are you calling me?" There was a pause, a long, heavy silence that stretched down the phone line. "Well," my mother said, her voice dropping to a near whisper, "she was driving your car." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. My ears started ringing. I couldn't have heard her right. "What did you say? What do you mean she was driving my car?" "Now, Jessica, don't get hysterical. She just needed to run an errand and you weren't answering your phone. She knows where you keep the spare key. It was an emergency." "An emergency? What emergency?" My voice was rising, sharp and thin. "She needed to pick up a dress for a party tonight," my mother said, as if this was the most reasonable explanation in the world. "The point is, she's fine, a little shaken up, but fine." "The car, Mom," I said, my voice dangerously low. "How bad is the car?" Another sigh, this one full of weary impatience, as if I was the one being difficult. "It's not that bad, just a little crumpled in the front. It's just a thing, Jessica. It can be fixed. Your father is already on his way to the tow yard to sort it out. We'll handle it." "We'll handle it." The 3 words my family had used my entire life to smooth over every problem Rebecca created. They were the words that enabled her, the words that erased her accountability, the words that always, somehow, left me paying the price. But this time was different. This wasn't a broken vase or a forgotten bill. This was my dream. And as I hung up the phone, a cold, hard knot of dread and fury tightening in my chest, I had a feeling that handling it was going to mean something very different to me than it did to them. The tow yard was as grim as you'd imagine, a gravel-strewn purgatory for vehicles that had met an untimely end. The air smelled of oil and rust. My father was already there, speaking in low, serious tones to a man in greasy overalls. When he saw me, his face was a mixture of pity and paternal authority. "Jess, you shouldn't have come down here," he said, putting a hand on my arm. "I told your mother I had this under control." "I had to see it," I replied, my voice flat. I walked past him toward the spot where the tow truck had deposited my car. And then I saw it. A little crumpled was the understatement of the century. The entire front end was a mangled disaster. The metallic blue hood was folded in on itself like a piece of paper, the grille was shattered, and one of the headlights was dangling by a wire like a dislodged eye. The bumper was completely gone on one side. It wasn't just crumpled, it was destroyed. My symbol of independence, my reward for years of sacrifice, looked like it had been chewed up and spat out by a giant metal monster. A wave of nausea washed over me. I had owned the car for exactly 11 days. I stood there for a full minute, unable to speak, just taking in the sheer violence of the damage. My father cleared his throat beside me. "The police report says the other driver ran a red light. It wasn't Rebecca's fault." I turned to look at him, my eyes stinging. "She shouldn't have been driving it in the first place, Dad. She stole my car." "Now that's a strong word," he chided gently. "She borrowed it. She should have asked, I agree, but she's your sister. We don't use words like stole in this family." That was the core of it right there. In our family, there were 2 sets of rules. One for me, built on responsibility and consequences, and one for Rebecca, a fluffy, consequence-free playground where her whims were law. The drive home with my dad was suffocatingly quiet. He tried to fill the silence with practicalities about insurance claims and body shops, but I couldn't process any of it. All I could see was the wreckage. When we pulled up to my parents' house, my mother met us at the door, her face etched with worry. "Is she okay?" was the first thing she asked me, as if I were the one who had just been in an accident. "I'm fine, Mom," I said, my voice dripping with an irony that went completely over her head. Rebecca was sitting on the living room sofa, scrolling through her phone, a designer bandage plastered over one of her knuckles. She looked up when I walked in, a flicker of something, annoyance, boredom, in her eyes. She wasn't crying. She wasn't remorseful. She looked like she'd been mildly inconvenienced. "Oh, hey," she said casually. "Dad said it looks worse than it is." I stared her, my blood starting to boil. "It looks like it was driven into a wall, Rebecca. What happened?" She shrugged, her eyes darting back to her phone. "It's not a big deal. This guy came out of nowhere. It wasn't my fault. I already told Dad." "That's not what I asked," I said, stepping closer. The smell of her floral perfume filled the air, a sickeningly sweet scent in the face of my fury. "I asked what happened. Why were you driving my car after I explicitly told you that you were not allowed to?" She finally put her phone down, her expression hardening. "God, you're so dramatic. My car was low on gas and I was in a hurry. You weren't answering your phone. What was I supposed to do? It was an emergency." "Your emergency was picking up a dress for a party," I shot back, my voice shaking with rage. "You took my car without permission, you wrecked it, and you don't even have the decency to look sorry." That's when it happened. A slow, lazy smirk spread across her face. It was a look of pure, unadulterated confidence. It was the look of someone who had never faced a real consequence in her life and knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that she wasn't about to start now. "Relax," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "It's just a piece of metal. You're insured, right? You'll get it fixed. It's fine." "It's not fine," I was shouting now, and I didn't care. "You had no right." My mother rushed forward, placing herself between us. "Jessica, that's enough. Your sister has been through a traumatic experience. Look, she's shaken up." Rebecca, on cue, let her lower lip tremble, her eyes welling up with crocodile tears. "You're yelling at me," she whimpered. "I could have been hurt." It was a perfectly executed performance, one she had been honing since childhood. The victim card played with the skill of a master, and my parents, as always, were the captive audience. "She's right, Jess," my father said, his voice firm. "Accidents happen. The important thing is that your sister is safe. We'll cover the deductible. We will make this right." I looked from my father's stern face to my mother's pleading eyes to my sister's tear-streaked, triumphant face. They had already formed a united front. I was the villain here, the cold, materialistic daughter who cared more about a thing than her own sister's well-being. As I stood there, outnumbered and seething, Rebecca wiped a fake tear from her cheek. Her eyes met mine over our mother's shoulder, and for a split second the mask slipped. The smirk was back, subtle but unmistakable. And then she mouthed the words that would echo in my mind for weeks to come, the words that ignited a fire in me I didn't know I possessed. "Mom and Dad will make you forgive me." She truly believed it. She believed that their love was a shield that made her invincible, that their checkbook could erase any mistake, and that my feelings, my work, my property were all secondary to her happiness. In that moment, watching her smirk, I realized this was about so much more than a car. It was about a lifetime of inequality, of being the bedrock so she could be the butterfly. And as I turned and walked out of that house, the sound of my mother calling my name fading behind me, I made a silent vow. They could try to make me forgive her. They could try to handle it. But they had no idea who they were dealing with anymore. The dutiful, quiet daughter was gone. In her place was a woman with a calculator for a brain, access to professionals, and a brand new, all-consuming purpose: accountability. And Rebecca was about to find out what that word really meant. The days following the accident were a masterclass in gaslighting and emotional manipulation, orchestrated by my parents with Rebecca as the star victim. My phone was flooded with texts and calls, not of apology, but of pressure. "Your sister is having nightmares, Jessica. You need to call her," my mother texted. "I've arranged for a top-rated body shop to give us an estimate. It's all being taken care of," my father messaged, as if the logistics were the only thing I cared about. They were trying to build a narrative, and in their story, I was the cold, unforgiving villain. I was the one disrupting the family harmony by refusing to play my assigned role, the gracious victim who pats her sister on the head and says, "It's okay, sweetie, it was just an accident." But it wasn't just an accident. It was a theft followed by an accident, crowned with a smirk of absolute entitlement. The smirk was the part I couldn't let go of. It was the visual representation of a lifetime of unfairness. I ignored their calls and gave short, non-committal replies to their texts. I needed space to think, to process not just the loss of my car, but the profound betrayal. I threw myself into my work, the clean, predictable logic of spreadsheets and market projections, a welcome balm for my chaotic emotions. My best friend Maria was my rock. When I finally told her the whole story, sitting in her cozy apartment with a glass of wine, she didn't offer platitudes. She got angry on my behalf. "They're treating you like a child, Jess," she said, her eyes flashing. "Like your property and your feelings are just collateral damage in the ongoing saga of Saint Rebecca." "That's exactly it," I said, the relief of being understood washing over me. "They want to write a check and pretend it never happened. My dad already said they'd pay the deductible." Maria, ever the paralegal, leaned forward. "Okay, let's get practical. You filed a claim with your insurance, right?" "I did," I confirmed. "The adjuster is supposed to call me this week. My dad tried to get me to let him handle the call, but I told him it was my policy, my name, my responsibility." "Good," she said, nodding sharply. "That's the first step. Don't let them take control of the information. The insurance company doesn't care about family dynamics. They care about facts, liability, and police reports. You need a copy of that police report, by the way, immediately." Her words were like a splash of cold water. She was right. My family operated in a murky world of emotions and unspoken rules. The outside world, the world of insurance, and potentially the law, operated on facts. While my parents were busy trying to manage my feelings, I needed to start managing the facts. The first crack in their perfect narrative appeared 3 days later. I got a call from the insurance adjuster, a no-nonsense woman named Linda. "Ms. Adams," she began, "I have the preliminary assessment of your vehicle. Given the extent of the damage to the frame and engine block, I'm sorry to tell you that we're declaring it a total loss." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. A total loss. It wasn't fixable. My 11-day-old car was gone forever. I see, I stammered. "Now, we also have the police report," she continued, her tone clinical. "It states that the other driver, a Mr. Henderson, did indeed fail to stop at a red light. So liability is clearly on his side, which is good news for your claim. However, there's a note here from the responding officer I need to clarify with you." "A note?" "Yes. It says the driver of your vehicle, a Ms. Rebecca Adams, was cited at the scene." My blood ran cold. Cited for what? My dad said the accident was the other guy's fault. "It was," Linda confirmed. "Mr. Henderson was cited for the red light violation. Your sister, however, was cited for driving without a valid license." I was speechless. A knot of ice formed in my stomach. "What do you mean, without a valid license?" According to the DMV record the officer ran at the scene, her license was suspended 3 months ago due to multiple unpaid speeding tickets. "Did you know you were permitting an unlicensed driver to operate your vehicle, Ms. Adams?" The question was a formality, but it felt like an accusation. "No, of course not. I didn't permit her to drive it at all. She took the car without my knowledge or consent." Linda was quiet for a moment. "I see. Well, that complicates things slightly from a policy standpoint, but the primary fault still lies with the other driver." The main issue is that this is now a legal matter for your sister. Driving on a suspended license is a serious offense. After I hung up, I sat in stunned silence. A suspended license. My parents had conveniently left that little detail out. Their story of a simple fender bender, where Rebecca was the blameless victim, was beginning to unravel. They weren't just covering for her irresponsibility, they were covering up her lawbreaking. They had put my brand new, very expensive asset in the hands of an unlicensed driver and hadn't even had the decency to tell me the whole truth. Did they even know, or had Rebecca lied to them too? It didn't matter. Their immediate reaction was to protect her, to hide the messy details, and to present me with a neat, tidy, and utterly false version of events. The fury I'd felt in their living room returned, but this time it was different. It was cold, sharp, and focused. My family had built their world on a foundation of lies designed to protect their golden child. They believed their love and money could solve any problem and smooth over any crack. But this was no longer a crack. This was a fissure, and I was about to drive a wedge into it. I immediately called Maria. "You are not going to believe this," I said, my voice trembling with a mixture of rage and vindication. I told her everything Linda had said. "Oh, Jess," Maria breathed. "This is so much worse than we thought. They didn't just let her borrow your car. They let an unlicensed driver take it, which could have had massive legal and insurance implications for you if the fault had been hers. They put you at incredible risk without a second thought." She was right. If Rebecca had been at fault, I could have been on the hook, potentially even sued personally. My entire financial future, everything I had worked for, could have been jeopardized by their reckless disregard for rules and consequences. "What do I do?" I asked, the weight of it all pressing down on me. "First," Maria said, her voice turning steely, "you play dumb. You don't let them know that you know. Let them keep spinning their story. And second, we get every piece of paper associated with this. The full police report, the insurance assessment, the tow yard invoice, the works. We are going to build a case based on facts, not feelings." A plan began to form in my mind, a clear path through the fog of my anger. My parents wanted to handle it. They wanted to control the narrative, but they had made a critical error. They had underestimated me. They still saw me as the compliant, rule-following girl who would eventually bend to their will. They had no idea that my training as a financial analyst, my ability to read the fine print, to follow the money, to see the story told by data, had prepared me perfectly for this moment. They were about to learn that facts are stubborn things, and I was about to collect every single one of them. The next week was an exercise in strategic silence and meticulous information gathering. I became a detective in my own life's drama. Following Maria's advice, I acted completely passive whenever my parents contacted me. I let them believe their campaign of emotional attrition was working. "The insurance is going to issue a check for the value of the car, minus your deductible," my father informed me over the phone, his voice filled with a problem-solved tone. "Your mother and I will cover the deductible, of course. We can all go car shopping this weekend and put this unfortunate business behind us." "Okay, Dad," I said meekly. "Thanks for handling it." He sounded relieved. "That's my girl. I knew you'd see sense. It's family that matters, not things." It took every ounce of self-control not to scream into the phone. "It's not about the thing, Dad. It's about the lies." But I held my tongue. The time for confrontation would come, but it had to be on my terms, armed with undeniable proof. My first step was getting the official police report. I went to the precinct and picked up a copy. Reading it in black and white was chilling. It detailed the other driver's fault, but it also clearly listed the citation issued to Rebecca, operating a motor vehicle with a suspended license. It included her previous ticket numbers. This wasn't a secret, it was a public record. My parents either knew and deliberately hid it, or they were so willfully ignorant that they never bothered to ask the right questions. I wasn't sure which was worse. Next, I spoke with Linda, the insurance adjuster, again. I explained that Rebecca had taken the car without my permission. This was a crucial step. By officially documenting it as unauthorized use, I was protecting myself, though it felt like a dagger to the heart to formally accuse my own sister. "This is good to have on record," Linda said professionally. "It won't change the outcome of this claim since the other party was at fault, but it clarifies your position. Now, regarding the payout. The value assessed for your vehicle, a 2025 model with only 300 miles on it, is $42,500. After we deduct your $1,000 deductible, the check issued to you will be for $41,500. I wrote the numbers down. Then I dug into my own finances. I pulled up the bill of sale for the car. I had paid $46,000, including taxes, title, and dealership fees. I had also made a down payment of $10,000 and financed the rest. The insurance payout wouldn't even cover the full loan amount. I was going to be out thousands of dollars, even before considering the hassle of getting a new car. The idea that my parents could just cover the deductible and make everything whole was a fantasy. But the real bombshell came from the tow yard. When my dad had the car towed from the scene, it was taken to a lot affiliated with the police department. He'd had it moved a day later to a body shop of his choosing. I called the initial tow yard and asked for a copy of the impound report and the personal effects inventory sheet, which they are required to complete. "Sure, ma'am," the dispatcher said. "Let me see." A Ms. Rebecca Adams was listed as the driver. We have an inventory of the items found in the vehicle: a purse, a gym bag, a textbook, and one empty, pre-rolled cannabis vape pen found in the center console. My heart stopped, the world went quiet. "A what?" "A cannabis vape pen, ma'am. Empty." The officer at the scene noted it in his log, but since possession of that amount is decriminalized here and there was no evidence of impairment at the time of the accident, he didn't pursue it. It was simply listed on the inventory. "Looks like your sister collected her personal effects the day after the accident. She signed for them right here." I felt sick. My sister wasn't just an unlicensed driver. She was driving around with drug paraphernalia in my brand new car. The sheer, staggering recklessness of it all was overwhelming. This wasn't a simple mistake. It was a pattern of behavior, a deep-seated disregard for any rule, any law, any person that inconvenienced her. And my parents were the architects of this monster of entitlement. I printed everything: the police report with the suspended license citation, the insurance assessment declaring the car a total loss, the breakdown of my financial loss, the gap between the payout and the car's actual cost, and finally, a copy of the tow yard inventory report with the line about the vape pen highlighted in yellow. I put them all in a neat folder. This folder was my truth. It contained no emotion, no accusations, just cold, hard facts. Maria came over that night. I laid all the documents out on my coffee table. She read through them one by one, her expression growing more and more grim. "Jess," she said, finally looking up from the tow yard report, "this is so much bigger than a car she could have. E ruined your life. If that cop had decided to pursue the vape pen, your car, your asset, could have been impounded as part of an investigation. You could have been dragged into it." "I know," I whispered. "And your parents," she continued, her voice filled with a quiet fury. "They are so desperate to protect her from the slightest discomfort that they are willing to risk your entire future. They're not protecting her, they're disabling her. They're teaching her that actions don't have consequences. That is not love, Jessica. It's poison." She was right. For years, I had accepted my role. I was the responsible one, the stable one. My achievements were quiet, my troubles were my own. Rebecca was the project, the one who needed constant support, funding, and defense. It was a system my parents had created to keep the family unit intact, but it was a deeply dysfunctional one. I had been propping up a corrupt system my whole life, and for what? To be betrayed, lied to, and then told my feelings were an overreaction. "What are you going to do?" Maria asked gently. I looked at the folder on the table. It felt heavy, like it contained the weight of 20 years of unspoken resentment. "I'm going to a family dinner on Sunday," I said, my voice steady and clear. My father is planning a clear-the-air talk where he will graciously present me with a check for the deductible and expect me to hug my sister and forget everything. He thinks he's closing a chapter. I picked up the folder and tapped it on the table. But I'm the one who is going to end this story. The plan was no longer just about making Rebecca pay for the car. That was simple math. This was about dismantling the entire system of lies and entitlement that had allowed this to happen. This was about forcing my family to look at the truth, the ugly, inconvenient, documented truth. And finally, for the first time in her life, making Rebecca answer for her actions. The quiet, sensible daughter was about to conduct the most important audit of her life. The days leading up to the Sunday dinner were eerily calm. My parents, believing I had come to my senses, were cheerful and loving in their texts. "Can't wait to have my girls together again," my mom wrote. Rebecca sent a single text, "Hey, THX for being cool about this." I didn't reply. Being cool about this was the last thing on my mind. My coolness was the deceptive calm of a deep lake before a storm. Instead of stewing in anger, I channeled my energy into meticulous preparation. This wasn't just going to be an emotional outburst. It was going to be a presentation, a closing argument. I created a simple, one-page spreadsheet. It was my professional weapon of choice, and I knew how to use it to devastating effect. The spreadsheet had several sections. Section 1, the vehicle. It listed the make, model, date of purchase, and the purchase price, $46,000. Section 2, the accident. It listed the date of the incident and a line item, use of vehicle, unauthorized. Section 3, the financial impact. This was the core of it. Line 1, insurance assessed value, $42,500. Line 2, policy deductible, $1,000. Line 3, insurance payout, $41,500. Line 4, original loan amount, $36,000. Line 5, payout applied to loan, $36,000. Line 6, remaining payout, $5,500. Line 7, original down payment, my cash, $10,000. Line 8, net financial loss, $4,500. I stared at the number in bold. $4,500. That was the real, tangible cost to me, even after their magnanimous offer to cover the deductible. That was the amount of my hard-earned money that had simply vanished into thin air because of my sister's emergency. And that didn't even account for the cost of taxes and fees on a new car, or the fact that my insurance premiums would likely rise. I printed out 4 copies of the spreadsheet. Then, I made 4 copies of the other documents in my folder, the police report with Rebecca's citation highlighted, and the tow yard inventory with the vape pen entry highlighted. The insurance assessment was already covered in my spreadsheet. I arranged each set of documents into a neat little packet and placed them in my briefcase. I also made a phone call to my uncle, my dad's younger brother, Robert. He was a retired police sergeant, a man who lived and breathed by the concepts of law and order. We weren't incredibly close, but he had always shown me a quiet respect that I rarely got from my own parents. I told him a sanitized version of events, focusing on the legal aspects, the unauthorized use, the suspended license, and my concern about my parents' dismissive attitude. "They're enabling her, Jessica," he said, his voice gravelly and serious. "And it's dangerous. Today it's a car and a suspended license. Tomorrow she could hurt someone and they'll still be trying to bail her out. You're doing the right thing by forcing the issue." His validation was a small but significant comfort. He wouldn't be there, but knowing I had a rational family member on my side strengthened my resolve. On Sunday, I dressed carefully, not for a family dinner, but for a board meeting. I wore a sharp pair of trousers, a silk blouse, and a blazer. I wanted to project an aura of calm, professional competence. I was not the hysterical, emotional daughter they were expecting. I was a financial analyst about to present a report on a catastrophic loss. When I arrived at my parents' house, the atmosphere was thick with forced cheerfulness. My mother had cooked my favorite meal, a classic manipulation tactic. My father was jovial, clapping me on the shoulder as I walked in. Rebecca was perched on an armchair, looking angelic in a white sundress. It was a perfectly staged scene of family harmony, and it made my skin crawl. We sat down to dinner, and the small talk was excruciating. They asked about my work, about Maria, about everything except the giant, wrecked car-shaped elephant in the room. They were following their script, waiting for the designated moment after the meal to resolve things. I played along, eating my food, answering their questions politely, and waiting for my cue. It came, as predicted, with dessert. My father cleared his throat, a self-satisfied smile on his face. "Well," he began, looking around the table. "I'm so glad we can all be here together. There's been some tension this past week, and it's time to put it behind us. Jessica, your mother and I know how much that car meant to you." He slid a check across the table. It was made out to me for $1,000. "This is for the deductible," he said grandly. "We want to make you whole. Rebecca feels just terrible about what happened." He looked at Rebecca, who produced a watery, well-rehearsed smile. "I'm really sorry, Jess," she said, her voice soft and apologetic. It was the most insincere apology I had ever heard. This was my moment. The curtain was rising on my performance. I didn't look at the check. I calmly took a sip of water, placed my napkin on the table, and reached down for my briefcase. I pulled out the 4 packets of documents I had prepared. "Thank you, Dad," I said, my voice even and cool. "I appreciate the gesture, but before we talk about a deductible, I think we all need to be on the same page about what actually happened. I've prepared some documents to clarify the situation, since there seems to be a lot of misinformation." I slid a packet across the table to each of them. One for my father, one for my mother, and one for Rebecca. My father frowned, picking up the papers with a confused look. "What's this? A spreadsheet?" My mother looked bewildered. Rebecca just stared at her packet as if it were a venomous snake. "If you'll turn to the first page," I said, my voice taking on the tone I used when presenting to clients, "you'll see a complete financial breakdown of the loss. As you can see, even with the insurance payout and your generous offer to cover the deductible, I'm still facing a net personal loss of $4,500. So, this check, while appreciated, doesn't make me whole. It doesn't even come close." My father's face began to change. The jovial mask was cracking, replaced by a flicker of irritation. My mother just looked lost. "Now, if you'll turn to the next page," I continued, my gaze steady, "you'll find a copy of the official police report. I've highlighted the relevant section. Rebecca wasn't just in an accident. She was cited for driving with a suspended license." A sharp intake of breath came from my mother. My father's eyes scanned the page, his jaw tightening. Rebecca went pale. "Her license was suspended 3 months ago for unpaid tickets," I said, letting the fact hang in the air. "Did you know that when you decided she should borrow my car?" "We didn't," my father started, but his voice faltered. "And finally," I said, delivering the killing blow, "please turn to the last page. That is a copy of the vehicle inventory report from the police tow yard. I've highlighted an item found in the center console of my car. An item Rebecca signed for when she collected her belongings." I watched as 3 pairs of eyes dropped to the final page. I saw the exact moment each of them read the words, "empty, pre-rolled cannabis vape pen." A silence. A deep, profound, suffocating silence descended on the room. The carefully constructed fantasy world my parents had built around their perfect daughter had just been obliterated by 3 pieces of paper. The air crackled with the unspoken truth. This wasn't about a car anymore. This was a reckoning. The silence in the dining room was a living thing. It was heavier than any words could have been. The cheerful facade of our family dinner had been stripped away, leaving behind the raw, ugly framework of our dysfunction. My father, Charles, an architect who prided himself on precision and structure, stared at the documents as if they were blueprints to a building he didn't recognize. My mother, Karen, who managed hundreds of teenagers at her school with an iron will, looked small and utterly lost. And Rebecca, all the color had drained from her face. Her practiced pout, her well-honed victimhood, it all vanished, replaced by the stark, panicked look of someone who has just run out of excuses. The shield was down. For the first time in her life, she was exposed. It was my father who spoke first, his voice a low growl. He wasn't looking at me. His eyes were fixed on Rebecca. A suspended license? Rebecca, is this true? She shrank under his gaze, nodding mutely, her eyes wide with fear. "And this," he said, tapping the tow yard report with a trembling finger. "This vape pen, in your sister's brand-new car." Rebecca opened her mouth, then closed it. The lies that had always come so easily were failing her now. There was no room for them in the face of the black-and-white evidence in front of him. "It wasn't mine," she whispered, the words so feeble they barely made a sound. "I was holding it for a friend." "I don't care who it belonged to," my father roared, slamming his hand on the table, making the glasses jump. "It was in your possession, in a car you stole, while you were driving illegally. Do you have any idea at all of the jeopardy you put your sister in? The legal and financial risk." My mother finally found her voice, but it was weak and pleading. "Charles, please, you're upsetting her." "Upsetting her?" he shot back, turning his fury on her. "She's a 21-year-old adult who is breaking the law, lying to our faces, and has destroyed a $46,000 piece of property. I think it's high time she was upset. Did you know about her license, Karen?" She said she had taken care of the tickets," my mother stammered, wringing her hands. "I didn't think to check." "You didn't think to check," my father repeated, his voice laced with disbelief and a dawning horror. He was finally seeing it, his own complicity, her decades of enabling. He was seeing the rotten foundation beneath the perfect family home he thought he had designed. I remained silent, letting the storm rage around me. I had presented the facts. Now I was just an observer. Rebecca, seeing that her usual protectors were either attacking her or crumbling, finally turned her attention to me. Her fear was curdling into a bitter, desperate anger. "You did this," she hissed, her voice filled with venom. "You went behind my back, digging up dirt to make me look bad. You've always been jealous of me." I met her gaze without flinching. My voice was calm and measured, a stark contrast to the chaos in the room. "No, Rebecca, you did this. You took my car, you drove without a license, you were irresponsible. These aren't dirt. These are consequences. They are the direct results of your actions. For your entire life, Mom and Dad have protected you from consequences. I'm not doing it anymore." I then turned to my parents. "And for you too," I said, my voice hardening. "Your help has been to lie to me, to hide the truth, and to pressure me into forgiving a crime. You weren't protecting her. You were protecting yourselves from the inconvenience of dealing with who your daughter has actually become. You were so busy making her feel loved that you forgot to teach her how to be a decent human being." My mother started to cry, silent tears streaming down her face. My father looked defeated, the anger draining out of him, replaced by a profound weariness. He looked old. I stood up, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. I took the $1,000 check from the table, picked up my briefcase, and walked over to Rebecca. I held the check out to her. She looked at it, confused. "This is a start," I said. "According to my calculations, you owe me $4,500 to cover my direct financial loss. That doesn't include the increased insurance premiums I'll be paying for the next several years, or the cost of my time and labor in dealing with your mess. So, you will be paying me back. All of it." She stared at me, dumbfounded. Where am I supposed to get that kind of money? "I don't know," I replied coolly. "Get a job, a real one. Sell your designer clothes. Ask your friends for the money you're always spending on brunch. Figure it out. It's called being an adult. You can give the money to Dad, and he can transfer it to me. I don't want to speak to you again until it's paid in full." I then looked at my parents. "I love you both, but I can't be a part of this anymore. This family dynamic is broken. I need space. I won't be coming to family dinners or holidays for a while. I need to protect myself from this toxicity. When you're ready to have an honest relationship, one where I am treated as an equal and not just a supporting character in Rebecca's life. You know my number. With that, I turned and walked out of the dining room, leaving my perfectly assembled packets of truth on the table in front of them. I didn't wait for a response. I didn't look back. As I closed the front door behind me, I could hear the sounds of my mother's sobbing and my father's tired, angry voice. The silence was finally, irrevocably broken. And as I walked to the rental car I had been driving all week, I felt a strange sense of lightness. It wasn't triumph or joy. It was the quiet, clean feeling of a long-overdue amputation. I had cut out the poison. Now, the healing could begin. The aftermath was not a sudden, cinematic explosion, but a slow, quiet crumbling. The first few weeks were defined by a profound silence from my family. No angry calls, no pleading texts. It was as if the shockwaves from that Sunday dinner had rendered them speechless. It was a relief, but also deeply unsettling. The silence was a void where a family used to be. During that time, I focused on myself. I took the insurance money and after some careful research bought a new car. It was almost identical to the first one, but this time, buying it felt different. It wasn't a symbol of escape or achievement anymore. It was just a car, a tool for my life. My sense of self-worth was no longer tied up in an object that someone else could take or destroy. It was now rooted in the strength I'd found in standing up for myself. Maria was incredible. She seemed to know that I needed normalcy more than anything. We had our celebratory dinner, belated but much needed. We didn't talk about my family. We talked about work, about a new restaurant she wanted to try, about a terrible movie we had both watched. Her friendship was an anchor in the turbulent water. About a month after the dinner, I received a notification from my bank, a transfer of $1,500 from my father. The memo line simply read, "From Rebecca." A week later, another $500 arrived. It was slow, piecemeal, but it was happening. She was paying me back. I learned through the grapevine, my Uncle Robert, that my father had given her an ultimatum: get a full-time job and pay back every cent or be cut off completely. No more funding for her apartment, her car, or her journey of self-discovery. Faced with a choice between real responsibility and losing her safety net, Rebecca had, for the first time, chosen responsibility. She was working as a waitress at a high-end restaurant. I could only imagine how much she hated it. My father called me about 2 months after the confrontation. His voice was different, subdued, humbled. He didn't apologize in a grand, sweeping way. It was quieter, more meaningful. "I've been doing a lot of thinking, Jess," he said, "about how we raised you girls. We thought we were being fair, but we weren't. We were so afraid of stifling Rebecca's spirit that we forgot to give her a spine. And we took your strength for granted. We leaned on it. That wasn't fair to you. I'm sorry." It was the most honest thing he had ever said to me. It was the crack in the door I needed. "I appreciate that, Dad," I replied, my voice thick with emotion. Our relationship began to rebuild, slowly and cautiously. We met for coffee. We talked about his retirement projects, my work. We didn't talk about Rebecca or my mother. Not yet. We were rebuilding on new, more solid ground. My mother took longer. Her identity was so wrapped up in being Rebecca's fierce protector that my actions had felt like a personal attack on her motherhood. It was my father who eventually told me that she had started seeing a therapist. She was trying to understand her own patterns, her own reasons for enabling Rebecca for so long. The final piece fell into place almost a year later. I received the last payment from Rebecca, bringing the total to exactly $4,500. That evening, my phone rang. It was her. I almost didn't answer, but something made me swipe to accept the call. "Hi," she said. Her voice was thin, nervous. It was a voice I had never heard from her before. "Hi, Rebecca," I said, keeping my tone neutral. I just wanted to say that the debt is paid," she said. "And I'm sorry, for the car, for the lies, for everything. You were right, about all of it. I was a horrible person." She started to cry, but these weren't the crocodile tears I was used to. They sounded real, ragged with shame. "I'm trying to be better," she whispered. I took a deep breath. Forgiveness wasn't a switch I could just flip. The scars were deep. But for the first time, I felt a flicker of something other than anger toward her. It was a distant, faint pity. "I hear you," I said softly. "Thank you for saying that. Keep trying, Rebecca." I don't know if our relationship will ever be what it was, but perhaps that's a good thing. What it was wasn't healthy. Maybe, someday, we can build something new, something based on mutual respect instead of a lopsided sense of duty. My family is still a work in progress. We don't have big, happy Sunday dinners anymore. Our interactions are more deliberate, more honest, and sometimes more awkward. But they are real. By tearing down the facade, I had exposed the rot, but I had also let in the light. I lost the family I thought I had, but I gained the possibility of a family that is honest and fair. I learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your family and for yourself is to hold them accountable. It's not about revenge, it's about respect. And standing there, with my finances restored, my boundaries established, and my integrity intact, I finally understood that my first car wasn't my great symbol of independence. My real independence wasn't something I could buy, it was something I had to claim. And I did.